Good morning, good morning, good morning. A massive welcome to everyone for joining us for what is the first ever Cogito webinar, Building Your Employer Brand Presence When You're Hiring Less, with none other than employer brand guru David Thompson. I know that a lot of you would have attended one of our live HR events. Crikey, that seems a while ago now. Actually getting to meet people face to face, sit down, have a coffee. Hopefully that will come back sooner rather than later. But a big welcome to all of you, and also a massive welcome to everyone joining us for the first time. My name is Hugo Rioch. I have been with Cogito for about 3 years or so, and amongst other things, look after all the events here. I'll shortly be handing over to David Thompson, who really has been working with employer brand for the last 20 years or so. There's nothing really David doesn't know, so really is a specialist on the subject, so there should be a lot for you to take away today. Who are we? We are Cogito. We're a people insights business providing organizations and companies bespoke data to hire smarter, faster and cheaper. Our mission is to improve candidate attraction, employer brand effectiveness and recruitment performance. So just before we kick off, I was keen to get a bit of a temperature check on where you are as far as your current hiring goes. So if you could very quickly just fill out this poll for me, which hopefully will fill us with a little bit of optimism. That'd be fantastic. Just give you a second to do that. Brilliant, thank you very much. And now just a little bit of housekeeping. You'll notice that everyone is on mute. If you can stay on mute, we've got thankfully a fair few people on the webinar today. So if you've got any questions, just pop them in the chat window on your GoToWebinar panel, and obviously we'll address those as we get towards the end of the webinar. So now not really much more for me to do, but to hand over to our main speaker, David. Can you hear me all right?
Can you find you go?
Fantastic. So I'm going to mute myself and take my camera off, but I will be in the background if anyone needs anything. So best of luck, David. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Hugo. Good morning, everybody. First off, technical team, can we hear everything okay? See my screen okay? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, good morning. Hi. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. As Hugo said, my name's David Thompson. I'm employer branding consultant here with Cogito. I've been working in employer branding for since before it was called employer branding, when it used to be called recruitment marketing. But we've seen such an evolution recently in employer brand and the way it works. So just swap the screen over here. There we go. Lovely. So, yes, employer branding is going through a period of evolution at the moment, which is quite unlike anything we've ever seen. And what I want to do this morning is just spend some time kind of thinking about that and thinking about the future of employer branding, where it's going, what happens next. And during these, dare we say it, uncertain and unprecedented times, how you can build your employer brand presence when you're hiring less, and why that's so important. Okay, so I think it's fair to say that most of us, most organisations, we haven't got a crystal ball, not soothsayers, but it'd be a fairly reliable thing to say that over the next couple of years, most organisations are going to be hiring less people. And if we haven't got as many jobs to advertise, well, what do we do? Why do we bother putting our name out there? Why do we bother, putting ourselves forward as an employer if we haven't got any jobs to fill? So this is something, a conundrum that I would imagine is going on in a lot of resourcing departments at the moment. But I feel that employer branding is going through such a transition at the moment that it's actually more important than ever to have your employer branding messages out in the market, even if you have less jobs to advertise. And the reason I feel that is because employer branding is as much about managing your reputation and as much about managing the feelings and sentiments of your employees and future talent audiences as it is at short-term hires. And I think we're seeing a real evolution and adaptation of employer branding happening before our very eyes. I think up until the start of this year, it was probably 90% seen as a recruitment aid, a vehicle to attract more CVs and get more good candidates. But I think over the last 3 months, we've seen an evolution. It's changing, becoming something more holistic and becoming as much about building confidence with existing employees as it is with future employees. And I think the reason is because we've seen the way we work change so dramatically in such a short period of time. So we've mainly shifted to home working. And as far as we can see, that's the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future. And even once we've gone through the whole COVID phase, I would imagine there will be quite a few people who stay working at home. There are advantages for businesses, obviously. You don't need as many offices, less running costs. There are advantages for employees. You know, it's great to work from home. You can spend more time with your family, less commuting. That's great, but there's a downside as well. And I think we will see this becoming increasingly prevalent over the coming months and years. What happens when we work from home? When we work in offices together, there is a kind of unspoken glue that binds us. We feel part of something. We feel it's physical. I can see my colleagues. I can work closely with them. I can see my leaders. I feel close to that business, and I feel part of something significant. When we all move into our homes, that glue begins to weaken. You know, if we don't know what's going on in our businesses, we're just sat behind our laptop at a kitchen table or in our, our home offices. How do we keep that sense of reassurance that we get from being in a workplace going? You know, you can start to sense anxieties, like, what happens when I come back to the office? What happens if furlough ends? What happens if I get made redundant? Is my job safe? Can I hit my targets? This kind of existential dread kind of grows in us, which isn't necessarily there when we're in this community together working in a workplace. So anxiety through lack of communication and a lack of feeling bonded to an organisation can start to create workforce instability. And workforce instability can start to create a drop in productivity, can create higher levels of attrition. So it's not a good thing, And I think we've seen some really interesting research that was conducted by Cogito during in June, at the height of kind of when we were all working from home. 45%, this really shocked us, this first statistic, 45% of employees have had no contact from their employer during the furlough period. So you can imagine what that is doing to those employees' sense of confidence and well-being. It won't feel very good. You'll start to feel detached from your business. We also learned in that research that 60% of people change their move about a career move in the next 12 months. Now, when I first saw that, I thought, well, that's probably quite easily explained. I expect most people are saying, it all looks a bit shaky out there. I'm not going to move job anymore. But actually, when we dug deeper, what we found was 55% of those people think they're more likely to be looking for a new job. So what that was telling us was, well, actually, quite a lot of these people are feeling probably quite unconfident. Are they thinking, is this business going to go under? Am I going to get made redundant? I've heard nothing from my employer. I don't feel very good about this. So instability is something that's begun to, really raise its head recently, and I think we're going to see it grow over the coming months. And the way to overcome that instability is good communication. But if 45% of businesses aren't even talking to their employees, well, that's terrible. That's just going to increase this sense of insecurity. So this is where employer branding can really help. Employer branding helps to create not just a factual, but an emotional connection between existing employees and employer, which helps to reduce that sense of anxiety and build confidence in what tomorrow looks like. It also helps to build reputational reassurance. So at the moment, if we are thinking about moving jobs in the future, we're going to be looking around and starting to pick up signals for employers that we can trust. 75% of job seekers consider an employer brand of an organisation before applying for a job. 50% of candidates say they wouldn't work for a company with a bad reputation, even if that meant higher pay. So increasingly, employer reputation is becoming something that candidates look at very strongly. And good employer branding, again, creates emotional connections with external talent audiences, and it creates empathy and trust. So by telling really good stories now about why you're a great employer and the things that you're doing for your people, you'll not only help to solidify your reputation with your existing employees, but also you're building your reputation tomorrow with future employees as well. But it's not just employers and employees. Increasingly, employer brand and employer stories are front page news, front and center for many organizations. We've seen many examples through the last few months, both positive, people like Bet365 talking about all the support they're giving for their employees, and Timpson's doing a fantastic job of being so supportive towards not just their own staff, but also job seekers, offering free, I think it was dry cleaning for people who are going for a job interview, just to help them along. So many positive things that's going to really enhance not only their reputation as an employer, but their brand in its biggest sense. So it's more holistic. Their shareholders, their customers are going to be looking at this, kind of saying, that's great, that's a business I feel happy doing business with. Equally, it can go the other way. BA talking about fire and rehire, that's negative press, Sports Direct, the way they've treated their employees. This stuff sticks. It's not like the old days where today's newspaper stories, tomorrow's chip paper. These stories will be around, for good now. And what we've seen increasingly is the convergence of consumer brand and employer brand. With employer brand increasingly influencing, and in some cases becoming, the consumer brand. What people are saying about you as an employer at the moment will be so important to the way you are able to do business in the next few years. So it's so important at the moment to be making sure that you are telling those great stories about how you behave as an employer, and not just disappearing into the shadows. So the temptation is to follow the flock, be a sheep, keep quiet, stay out of trouble, don't say anything at all. But my assertion at the moment is it's a brilliant time and a very important time to be confidently talking about about what you're doing as an employer and how you're supporting your people. Most organizations will probably have some bad news to impart as well. That's probably inevitable, but if you can do that against the context of, okay, we may have had to have some redundancies, but we are working hard to protect our people and do the best for them. That will be beneficial to your employees, your future employees, and also to your brand overall. So really important. Get out there, be a shepherd, don't be a sheep. Okay, that's all very well, David. How do we do it? Okay, what I'm just going to do now is take you through some steps which I think can help you get started and help show you how you can get yourself to a position of confidently talking to external markets and internal audiences about why you're a great employer. So the first piece of advice I would have is take stock, benchmark, take a step back. Don't be tempted to just run out there and say, we've got a lovely story to tell about one of our employees doing a nice thing, or make sure you're taking stock of where you're at. And there are a number of different ways of doing that. Take stock of how your employees are feeling. First of all, I would imagine most of you are running pulse and engagement surveys at the moment. Look carefully and deeply into the results of those surveys and take a temperature check on how your people are feeling, what they're reflecting back to you, how confident they feel. They'll probably tell you about how they're being communicated with. So look at the way you're communicating internally. How often are you talking to your employees to make them feel confident and well informed, and what channels are you using to do that? We run a lot of employer brand audits for clients, so that's a really helpful thing to do. Look at your messaging, look at your competitors' messaging. How does it stand up? Do you look to external audiences like a company that's got a great story, is confident in what they're saying? Or do you look like you've kind of just focused on jobs? You know, it's just a series of job ads essentially, without very much storytelling layered on top of that. How does that stand up and compare to your competitors? So a bit of benchmarking to start with, just to understand your position, is a really good thing to do. Do our people feel good? Are we saying the right things to external audiences? Do we stand up as to our competitors? How do people view us at the moment? I pinched this from LinkedIn the other day, a very lovely model which was shared, which I think is fantastic. When you've done your employer brand auditing, you can start to kind of categorize yourself and understand where you stand. So this lovely model, when we've done a recent employer brand competitor audit, shows us what level we stand at. So disqualified at the bottom, we're a company with a pretty poor reputation as an employer. People don't trust us, we're not really seen as a place to be. Regular, which is where most organizations are. You know, I can't tell you the amount of clients that I've worked with who say, people don't know anything about us, but when they come here and we get them into an interview process, they really like it. And once we've got them, they like being here. That's the category that most organizations fall into. They're just not very good at telling their stories and going out to market with a strong proposition. But actually, once you get to them, they're good people, they're good companies. You know, do we sit there, or are we in the upper echelons? You know, have we been doing good work with our employer brand, building our reputation, and actually we become something of a magnet? You know, candidates are attracted to us, people are attracted to us. Our community of advocates, you know, I'll talk to you more about advocacy in a minute, but our own people are enthused and passionate about sharing information about this business. Are we in that category? So you can kind of benchmark yourself and say, where do we sit at the moment? The next important thing to do before we start going out to market and telling stories is understand our own story. Employer branding, good employer branding is built from the inside out. Your own employees tell the story. Everything is done with authenticity. So you need to be researching what your story is and speaking to your employees either through surveys or through focus groups. Build from there what you've heard, build outwards, and build a strong employer value proposition. Here's an example. There's a lot of words on this slide, so don't worry too much about that. But this is an EVP framework I built for a client recently. And what I just want you to focus on is the 4 pillars that sit in the middle of this slide. These have all been researched with employees from across the globe. So we can confidently lean into these pillars for our stories and say, yeah, our people will look at this and go, yeah, I recognize that, that's us, you know, that means something to me. So you can now start going out to market confidently, creating content which will reflect these pillars, knowing that they're right, they're accurate because you've researched them. So build your employer proposition, but do it from the inside out, so your storytelling is authentic and confident. Then do your housekeeping. So make sure your external communications platforms are in good shape. Make sure your career site, if you've done your EVP and developed your EVP framework, make sure your career site content is reflecting that. Make sure your internal communications are using the right channels, reflecting the right information to your employees, and make sure you set up your social media pages, because they're increasingly becoming the most important element to your kind of arsenal of communication channels. I'll talk to you more about that in a second. So when we've got our communication channels correct in the right place, we have to start thinking about developing some content. Let's get out there and tell some interesting stories to people and get people sharing them, start building that reputation. Now, if you've ever done any sales training, like I have, quite a lot of us will have done, you'll be familiar with this model, this funnel. It's called AIDA, A-I-D-A, Attention, Interest, Desire, Action. And it describes the journey that we go on when we are thinking about purchasing or making a commitment to something. The same applies to careers and job seeking. You know. Now, the way we've behaved previously as resources and recruiters is to start our communication process with our potential customers, candidates, kind of 2/3 of the way down the funnel. We start at the desire end of the funnel, because we go out there with a job and say, okay, here's a job, this is what we've got to offer, this is what we need, and then work backwards from there. Oh, and by the way, this is the organisation we are, and here's what we do, and this is what our purpose is, and this is why we're great. We've always kind of worked in a very upside down way in resourcing, but that's because we need to fill jobs and we need to get candidates now. What we need to start doing at this point in time now is resources need to kind of flip themselves up down and shift from being candidate generators to storytellers, and creating content and activity which is far more focused on the attention part of that funnel. What we stand for, how we behave, what we're doing for our people to create that confidence and commitment for the future. So turning into storytellers and away from candidate generators is a bit of a mind shift that we need to make. I picked up a piece of research a couple of months ago by a company called Edelman. And Edelman creates research around brands and consumer brands and how people like to interact with brands. So they produced an interim report a couple of months ago all about brand trust in COVID-19 and how people want to be treated by brands. And I read it and thought, this is so applicable to employer branding when we're looking at the kind of content we want to be producing and the way we want to be speaking to external and internal audiences. So I've kind of pinched it, and I thought it would be good to just show you how you can apply it at the moment to help develop content which is right and hits the right tone for the market at the moment. So two of these points, I'm just going to put them on the first slide, which is solve, don't sell, and inform and connect. So don't sell me stuff, don't give me jobs at the moment. Doesn't feel, that's not what audiences are wanting. What I want is to understand how you are solving, finding solutions to problems at the moment, particularly from an employment point of view. And I want to be informed and connected with. So here's some really great examples that we saw emerging a couple of months back through the COVID period. So Rolls-Royce talking about how, and Next talking about how they're modifying their workplaces to allow their employees to come back to work safely and confidently. The impact that this kind of content is having on employees is, okay, I feel more confident that my business is a good business that's here to help people. The effect it's having on external talent audiences is, yeah, this is a business that cares. This is a business that really, cares about employees, puts its employees first. And to shareholders and customers, yes, this is a business that really cares about its people. So, great time to be talking about how you're protecting your staff and how you are working, how you're supporting your staff. Good example here from Auto Trader on the left. They were talking about how we just have coffee chats. People drop in and talk about how we're feeling. So helping people feel more bonded and connected to the business. Standard Chartered here on the right, talking about the feeling of acceptance and feeling that the business is working to make them feel included. All great stuff that's helping to get that glue back together in the business, that sense of connection. So, so stories about how you're helping and supporting, informing and connecting with your audiences are really powerful. And as we said, you can build your content around your EVP. What you can start doing is, depending on what your EVP pillars tell you, you may find actually that you've got pillars in your EVP, strengths in your business that you can lean into a little bit that really do help to match the kind of tone of what's required at the moment. Here's an example of another framework built for another client. What you can see that circled in red there is one of their main pillars, which is we're a people first business. Now, that's a fantastic, again, we know that, we've researched it, it's authentic. We know their own people are feeling that. So it's a great time to be able to lean into this, start producing these little bits of content talking about their flexibility, their family-like atmosphere, their collaboration, their accepting nature, knowing that it's authentic and it's real. And that's what people want to hear and feel. They don't want to be sold to at the moment. They want to hear, be informed about the stories that have support. The next point from Edelman's report is display a human touch. And we've seen this increasingly in consumer marketing over the last few months. Employees becoming front and center in marketing campaigns. So think ASDA, Tesco, Co-op, Amazon, all creating consumer advertising campaigns we see on telly, but all about their people. In fact, if you look at Amazon's TV advertising at the moment, it's all employer branding. All of their TV ads are about their employment experience. It's really interesting because they've seen how powerful that is. And if you have a bad reputation as an employer, which they did have a few months ago, there was some negativity, that can hit your share price. Your customers will not like that. So we're seeing people featuring in marketing and advertising so much more. That convergence of employer branding and consumer branding is becoming so much more prevalent. So great, okay, how do I do that? How do I display a human touch? Well, my advice here would be trust and enable your people to become content producers. If you've produced your proposition, your story, you can share it with them. And trust them to start producing content that will bring that story to life. Some of you might have seen this piece of research before, but it's really fascinating from Flashman Hill Consulting. People trust the voice of an employee 3 times as much as they trust the voice of the CEO, which is incredible. Increasingly, people want to hear stories of authenticity from people who work in businesses. It's why we're seeing the rise of review sites like Glassdoor and Indeed, where people want to go and find out really what's it like to work here from the people, not just what you've told me on your career site. I know you've probably written a little bit of an enhanced version of the truth there. What are the people really saying? So the trust of an employee's voice is such a powerful thing. Increasingly, there's software around that can allow you to do that very easily. You see 3 of them here: Video Job, CNET, Source, all designed to allow employees to create video content quickly and simply, and then allowing you to compile them, edit them, create them into social posts, post them out, and then put them into a library, into a repository. So great time to have these authentic stories being told, software that makes it relatively easy to do, or alternatively, you can use a blog site like Siemens have used, which is on the Medium platform. Just lots of human stories written by their employees about things they're doing, why they like it, how the business is supporting them. We said lean into the pillars that might be right, but careful not to lean too far, don't become too sentimental and over mawkish. I think we've seen the strapline, we're all in this together, used by 101 different organizations, so just be careful not to become what originally seemed like a powerful message can become a cliche message if you're not careful. So use those platforms to enable your employees to become the voice of the organization. A couple of examples here for you. Well, it's just one post, but I've just put it over 2 slides so you can see it in its complete form. So this is Next, and one of their employees here, Natalie's birthday, her 40th. They're talking about how they helped her celebrate her birthday. Lovely piece of very human communication, but what is important to me, if you just look at the arrow, is the hashtag #LifeAtNext. What it's saying above them is make sure you follow us to see more videos and content like this from the real people that make Next awesome. So if I now click on #LifeAtNext and follow that, now in my Facebook feed or my LinkedIn feed or my Instagram feed, I will see lots of these stories every time I open my browser or look at my phone about the human stories behind Next. And that's building empathy, confidence, trust in the employer brand of the organization. And all of this, how much is it costing? What's the advertising cost behind this? Nothing. It's just time, a bit of effort, a bit of creativity, but it needn't cost a great deal of money, which is very important because obviously employer brand budgets, recruitment marketing budgets at the moment are going to be minimal. This stuff you can do for next to nothing. Okay, great. That's a lovely story. We've got our hashtag. That's great. People, we want people to follow us, but how can we get the message out there in a big way if we haven't got a lot of money to put behind it? Okay, well, the next thing to think about doing is creating advocacy. And advocacy, for me, is kind of the future of recruitment advertising and employer branding. It's getting your own people to share your content, you share your stories on their own channels, and then getting their friends and networks and contacts to share on their channels and building out that way. There's an important reason for this. Increasingly, what we're seeing is the key social media platforms, their algorithms are reducing the influence of big brands with lots of followers. So they didn't want it just to become, they don't want them just to become advertising platforms where the big guys just dominate, and if they don't dominate, they just buy the audience. So the algorithms are making the voice of the individual stronger on the key social media platforms. So if you have your own employees sharing content, pulling people, and using careers hashtags, that's a really powerful way of spreading your message. So getting your own people to distribute content is a really great thing to do. But to share that content, how many times have you had someone in your organization say, please share this? And you're kind of saying, I don't understand why I would, or what does it mean to me to do this? And usually my experience is people are quite happy to talk about their organizations in general, but they don't know what to say. And they're afraid of saying the wrong thing or stepping on corporate toes, and they don't feel enabled. They don't feel that they've been given permission to do this. So make it very clear to your employees that we're giving you permission to do this. And if you make the odd mistake, we'll forgive you. And talk them through the EVP framework. These are the things that you told us are great about working here. So if you can kind of create content that brings this to life, well, that's fantastic. It gives us a great opportunity all to share the story. Create an advocacy guide for them, how to share. What do I physically do to make a post and put it somewhere and make sure I don't do it wrong? Create a little guide for them. It's not it's not social media rules and regulations. It's just some tramlines to work within, just some advice to help you get it right. I think you'll find your people, if you give them that support and enable them, they'll share. Most people are quite happy to share that content because they want to feel good about working for the company. And again, what's that doing? Well, the more that employees share it, other employees will see this and think, I feel confident, I feel good. So it just has this kind of positive spiral effect. So create your advocacy guide, create careers hashtag, and also as you start building content, put it somewhere where people can grab it and share it easily. Make it really easy for them. Don't just go around and say, please share something, because they'll be like, I don't know what to share and I don't know how to. Give them easy things to share, and they will share. And that's how you can build a bigger audience very, very quickly. So, final point from the report was I've mentioned this already earlier on. Step up today for the sake of tomorrow. Don't just talk about what you're doing now, but increasingly, be helpful, be supportive, understand and show empathy of the world at the moment, and people will appreciate that. That will strengthen trust and empathy in your employer brand. So, helpful content is really great at the moment. Talk about how you can keep connected with your colleagues. Maybe if you can post up some blogs or some advice on mental health and well-being, or how to work better from home, or keeping fit, or how to write a great job application if you've been made redundant. This kind of giving will pay dividends in the long run. You're giving something today, whether it's a white paper on how to do something, whether it's some handy tips, whether it's a blog, whether it's a little video. People will respect that and gain trust, and it'll stand you in good stead for the future. Little example here from Rolls-Royce. Mark's talking about how when your child born, oh gosh, how can we keep the kids occupied? Okay, well, the Rolls-Royce Digital Academy, keeping the kids busy. So helpful stuff that's going to just reinforce the sense that you care, you're a really caring organisation. So there you go. That's my little potted guide to how you can start off from being very quiet in the shadows because you don't have any jobs to advertise, to move to a place where people will start to really, your own employees and external candidates will really start to think, these guys are great. I love hearing the stories. So to sum it up, your employer brand will create that trust and confidence internally and externally. So don't shy away from it, lean into it and use it to your advantage. Shift your mindset from being a candidate generator to a storyteller, focusing on those top funnel messages, not just jobs, but the stories about why you do what you do, how you're doing it, show that human touch, use your employees to bring everything to life, trust them to produce good content, and create that culture of sharing and advocacy internally. And then finally, give and share. Give advice. Don't just talk about why it's a great place. Talk about helpful things that can support others. That's my little potted guide. I hope you found it useful. As we said, we don't have a crystal ball. The future's far from certain, but in uncertain times becomes opportunity. And it's a great opportunity now to set yourself in a position where you can be seen as the employer of choice, 1 year, 2 year. Hence, you're the magnet, you're the one at the top of that pyramid saying, candidates just want to come and work from us because we did the hard work, the graft back when everybody else was quiet. So I hope you found it useful, and thank you very much for joining. I'm now going to hand you back to Hugo. Have a great day.
Brilliant. I'm back. What did I miss, David? That seemed very comprehensive. I thought there's some really key points in there around using your own people to distribute content, and also an observation how big brands really are using employees and putting them front and center when it comes to their marketing and advertising. So just before we go, thanks once again for everyone for attending. We are offering a conversation initially around a free employer brand audit, and I'd be really keen just to establish if there was a level of interest around this free employer brand audit. So if you could just fill that out for me, that would be fantastic. Fantastic, brilliant, thank you for that. I think that's pretty much everything from us. David, have you got anything else you wanted to add?
No, just thank you very much for joining us, and yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And we did have quite a few questions, which I am conscious time-wise, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to cover here and now. But what I will do is ensure that within the next half an hour, by 12 o'clock at the latest, you do get a response, an individual response to those questions. So thanks once again, and be in touch. All the best.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.